Welcome to the Desire Over Doubt Show, coming to you from Savannah, Georgia, with your hosts, elite and international elite lifters, Nate and Savage Katt.
Hello everybody, and welcome to the Desire Over Doubt Show. This is my podcast voice. I have to switch over from my YouTube voice, which I just used on a previous video. I am Nate and with me, as always,
Savage Katt. I always use the same voice for everything.
And today we're going to be talking about motivation, habits, and consistency, and how it applies to powerlifting specifically. And how it can apply to your whole life, really. I mean, powerlifting is just a euphemism for your whole life, isn't it, really?
Yes, it is.
But first, I want to talk about what happened this last weekend.
Yes. So this past weekend, we hosted the Savannah Winter Classic. It was a USA powerlifting competition right here in Savannah, Georgia. We put it on with the help of our amazing powerlifting team and the help of the Anderson Cohen Weightlifting Center that's also right here in Savannah, Georgia.
Yeah, and thank you again for everybody that helped out, and also a special shout out to all the lifters that came and lifted. We had about 40 lifters come. They put on a great performance, great show. I mean, we had a lot of PRs. I know our couple of team members that lifted in it did a wonderful job, did an amazing job, and just came out really supportive, really fun, really supportive event.
Yeah, lots of first timers, and it's always really nice to see that and to see new people getting into the sport and experiencing what it's like to hit the platform. I really love that. I
totally agree. I do want to touch on, I think, because we've been talking about this a lot before we get into the rest of this podcast, is making the meets fun.
Yes.
And there's a lot of stress that goes into setting up a meet. There's a lot of stress during the day of the meet for both, for everybody. For your lifters, your referees, volunteers, your meet directors. Everybody's under a lot of stress. I really think it's important that we make sure that we still have a good time. Play goofy music, make some jokes, have some fun. You're there to have a good time. It's a sporting event. You've worked all this time to kind of get yourself ready for it. Don't stress yourself out. Having nerves is okay. Obviously, you should be a little bit nervous getting up there, but have fun with it. And let's try and carry that into any of the meets and any of the leagues that we go to. Let's all just try and have a little bit more fun, because everybody's been really uptight the last couple of years.
And that's not just talking about the lifters. We're talking about the volunteers. We're talking about the meet directors. Everything like that is just the better mood that you can be in, the better time that your lifters are going to have, and the better experience that the crowd is going to have. And overall, that's going to make powerlifting seem like the really fun sport that it is.
It actually is, yeah. And props to USA Powerlifting and the pro show they put on.
That looked awesome.
I think, issues that I have aside with that league politically, that looked like a really good event. They put it on, it looked like, people had walkout music. They looked like they were coming in to go into the middle of a WWE wrestling ring. It was really professionally done. Props to them for that. So let's it doesn't take much to do that either. You can do that real simple. So let's give powerlifting the attention it deserves and keep growing the sport, keep supporting your meet directors, keep going to the meets, and come in, work out, and support each other.
Yes.
Now on to today's topic.
Motivation. So we're going to start by talking about motivation. This is something that we talked about a few months ago, and I feel like we really could have, gone a little bit more deeply into it. Yeah. Not to mention our dogs had a lot to say on that particular episode.
Was that the one that Ranger threw up, or was it?
No, this is the one where I chased Blondie around the house for about 5 minutes.
It was like a 5-minute interlude of just chasing the dogs.
It was great.
It got a lot of hits, which means maybe we should include the dogs more often.
Perhaps. So
they seem
motivated. That was the main thing we were talking about in that podcast. Yep. And it's something that we get asked a lot by people, or people will say things to us like, I'm just not motivated.
And you're right. We get asked that a lot, and people say, well, how do you maintain motivation? How do you stay motivated? And the simple answer is you're not always motivated. You're not always, gung-ho, 100% ready to go into the gym and do what you need to do. It's important that you still do it, though.
Yes.
Because usually what I find out is once I start getting going on the workout, I end up finding my motivation. But we all go through spells, and we're not motivated. We lack it. But it doesn't mean you just stop.
Let's define motivation.
So to define motivation, I would like to just sort of use an example. And I'm going to actually go back to the dogs. And when you're training canines for police, sport, military, the dogs are highly motivated by something very simple usually. And that's usually a tennis ball in most of the training that we do. And that tennis ball represents motivation to me. Because that dog will do anything to get to that tennis ball and keep it, regardless of anything that's going on around them. And they never lose that motivation. They never do. That is something that they stay focused on. So motivation to me is something that you're focused on. It gives you the drive. It wells up an emotion in you and keeps you in an upward spirit more often than not, and more percentage of the time than not. It's your want, it's your why. It's always sitting in the back of your head as to, I'm not feeling great today. Well, your motivation's there to grab and help push you through. It's the driving force behind what a lot of us do, and I think a lot of us have lost that by doing things not out of motivation, not because of motivation, not to motivate ourselves, but just because it's become the wrong kind of habit.
You take it for granted, and you, instead of thinking, I get to do this, it's I have to do this.
Mm-hmm. And you corrected me today on that very thing. I said it today. I said I have to do the leg press today.
I'll never forget one of my best friends. You hear me talk about him all the time, Raph. One of my favorite training partners from college. He just said that to me one day when we were training. He said, you don't have to do this, you get to do this.
That's a big difference.
And that's not just with training, that's with anything in life that it is a privilege, and we forget about that. Like, well, I don't have to do deadlifts today, I get to do deadlifts today. I'm able-bodied. I have trained to be able to do the deadlifts. I have the time to do the deadlifts. Yep. I have the drive to do them. I have a reason to do them. I have the equipment to do them at my own house. All of these things are so positive to then have the negative mindset of I have to do this. That's not very motivating.
It's not very motivating.
Because now it's something like, I have to do this versus I get to do this today.
So what is an example of motivation for you?
It's very similar to what you were talking about. It's like the easiest thing to motivate me it's two things. Number one, having a good performance at my next competition, which is usually short-term and long-term goals. So I want to do well at the competition that I'm doing in March. I would also really like to do even better at the competition that I choose to do at the end of next year. Outside of that, it's setting a good example for my clients and athletes is one of my absolute biggest motivators, because I like to lead by example. Yep. And with that said, I'm absolutely not perfect. I will not pretend to be perfect. We all do things that are less than ideal sometimes, sure. But what really matters is that you consistently put in the effort and you try to set a good example.
And it really does affect the community around you. There's a quote that I'd like to just rattle off real quick, and it's, coming together is a beginning. Keeping together is progress. Working together is success. And that's Henry Ford. And the man knew how to motivate his people. I mean, he started the first real assembly line in selling cars that existed. And so I think motivation is more than just yourself, especially if you're a coach. You are called upon to motivate your people around you as well, even when you don't feel motivated, even when you're not feeling quite up to it. You still have to do it.
That's one of the hardest things about
put it on a face.
Being a coach or a trainer. And I don't like to put on a face. And honestly, it happens very rarely.
Very rarely.
That we have to do that, I feel. Because we do love it so much. And seeing other people be successful is more than motivating to me.
And our people, when I see them working hard, it motivates me. And that goes back to that quote, is seeing our people be motivated sort of reignites my fire. If I'm not having a great day and I watch one of my clients or athletes performing and doing everything they're supposed to do and making PRs, then I do get remotivated.
Yep. We've had a lot of that in the last week.
Yeah.
Having people hit PRs.
Yeah, a lot of them.
And it's great.
Both in competition and outside of competition. Yep. It's been great. We have one athlete going to do her first swim meet next month. She's a triathlete.
We do not coach her for swimming, y'all.
No,
Just to throw that out there.
I am not a swimmer.
We help her build strength for her primary sport.
I like to lay in water, but I'm not a swimmer. But yeah, she's a triathlete.
She's pretty amazing. She's pretty amazing.
So props to Amy. Good luck next week.
Yep.
She always seems motivated. She's always ready to go. Whenever I train with her, and I know you feel the same way, I always leave that training session feeling like, damn, we're doing something good.
You want to talk about a powerhouse that never ever makes any excuses?
Seriously.
It's
Amy Williams.
Yeah.
Amy effing Williams.
Yeah, she has all the reasons in the world to make excuses, but she absolutely never does. And she's tired. She's going to train anyway. She's, exhausted from work. She's going to train anyway. She's traveling. She's going to train anyway. She's going to get it in.
She brought us apples.
She brought us apples today.
Which is awesome.
It was very nice.
And she has wonderful habits.
She does have wonderful habits.
Which is what we're going to be talking about next.
So let's talk about the importance of habits. So habits are what you need to develop when your motivation kind of falls by the wayside. So like you were talking about before with dogs and how they have ball drive. We're not dogs, right? So
no, they're better than us.
They're better than us. Our motivation tends to waver a lot more than something like a working dog, police dog, military dog, whatever.
Because we allow the outside forces to get
us. We do not wear blinders. We are aware of society. We have to go and interact with all different kinds of people and be in different social situations. Obviously, we have jobs. Not that
bills
working dogs don't have bills to pay. Exactly.
And sometimes you come home and you go, wouldn't it be nice to just be a dog?
Yes.
And not have as many concerns.
So we need to develop habits that will help us maintain working towards our goals when our motivation may kind of fall by the wayside a little bit.
And maybe that goes a little bit into boundaries as well.
Absolutely.
And this is something I've learned a lot this year. I talked about this in a prior podcast or video, how I became ill this year and had to battle a little health issue myself. And that has definitely shocked me into creating some boundaries and saying, okay, well, it's this time of day. Really got to put the phone down and stop doing work. And it's still hard to do. And I still find myself slipping, but you have to create those boundaries. It's, you get a client that sends you a video and a message. You should have an understanding with your athletes that I'm not going to necessarily get back to you right away. I'm going to do all my check-ins on Saturday. I'm going to do my programming on Sunday and Monday. So I think it's more, if you set that boundary, then it creates good habits. And it's something that we're still working on too, as we develop ourselves as coaches. And I think it's something we'll always be working on. Always be working on. But I've noticed that by creating these boundaries, if we maintain them, they're actually going to build good habits.
Yeah,
for us.
And we are less stressed out.
And then your athletes are less stressed.
Yeah, and then they have an idea of, okay, well, when can I expect to hear back from you? And
I mean, like you said, once you get into the habit of responding to them at the same time every week, then that's when they expect it. So that boundary has created a positive habit through association. Again, something I take from the dog world. Dogs learn by association. And oddly enough, people do too. People learn by association. So if you associate Sunday with your normal check-in time, then that's what's going to happen. If you open up those boundaries and let people slip through and you start, taking messages on Wednesday and Thursday, it's going to snowball out of control and you're going to create a bad habit. And that bad habit is going to keep building with other people and other athletes as well until you force that boundary. Because it's just not realistic to be responding to 30, 40, 50, 60 people on an ongoing basis. It's going to absorb your life. So I tell people now, hey, I'm going to get back to this later on. I'll get back to you later on. And now most of my athletes, or maybe half of them, kind of understand it. And it's not wrong. Don't get me wrong. These athletes that are trying to contact us in the middle of the week, they're motivated. I'm glad that they're that psyched, and I'm glad that they're that excited. But in order for us to do our job well, we have to have those boundaries because we have to have a personal life of our own as well. And we have to have time for our training. And we have to
get other stuff
for
done.
them.
Yeah.
You know?
That's the thing is it's very common that people think that if you're a coach or a trainer that all you do is coach and train, and that's really not the case. And this is another part of building habits is doing things like setting aside a certain time frame every day to post on social media, a certain time frame every day to make sure that you're doing a minimum number of interactions. It's, you know, setting aside time every day to make sure that you're checking your email multiple times so you don't miss important stuff.
Exactly.
And those are just some of like the very small habits that help you to not get overwhelmed. And that's not just in coaching or fitness or anything like that. That's everyday life.
Everyday life. Whether you work as a janitor on overnights, or you're a coach, or you're
just a small business owner.
Exactly. But I'm a big fan now. And I'm learning this still, and I always will be, but of creating boundaries. And I'm developing my habits based on those boundaries. And I've really tried the last year. I myself have really tried to start reeling in, and that's part of the reason why we don't have the gym anymore. And
definitely.
It's actually, I would dare say, a majority of the reason why we don't have the gym anymore is because we needed to create a new boundary.
Yes.
We had a lot of bad habits forming that came from having to be on the ground floor operation of that business every day, and we realized we weren't actually getting ahead, and we weren't actually meeting our goals. And so we had to remove that. We had to create a boundary. We had to remove the gym from the equation. And now we're actually able to get back to our podcast, develop the YouTube channel, get you guys content, start making you guys tutorials on a lot of stuff, answer a lot more questions, develop more clientele, and just spread more knowledge to the lifting and strength community. That's what we wanted to do from the beginning, but owning a gym is really too small of a scale to do it. We want to give the information on a large scale. We want to help people on a large scale across the nation, across the world. Having a gym in a local city, you can only reach so many people because it is going to absorb so much of your time.
Definitely.
Now, I'm not saying it's not for some people. Some people do that and they love it. And I loved it. I loved owning a gym. I loved the people that we met.
Totally loved it.
And it was great. There were a lot of things I loved about it. There were more things I loved about it than not. But the things that I didn't love about it and that started encroaching on our life were just too cumbersome. And so, again, boundaries make good habits.
Absolutely. So we have motivation. We use that initial motivation to build habits that will stay tried and true when that motivation tends to waver. So what are some habits that you have right now that help you stay in your groove even when you're not like particularly motivated?
So a lot of my habits now, this is going to sound weird, but rotate around meals and food. And that sounds weird, but a lot of times I like to wake up in the morning when I can and make a breakfast for myself. And when I do that, it kind of sets me on the right mindset for the day. And so if I have that time when I make my eggs and potatoes or, you know, whatever, or pancakes, or whatever I'm making for breakfast, that habit has then put me in the mindset to do things the way that I want to do them the rest of the day. And then I know, like, okay, I've got this food in my system because I'm thinking about my own training later on. And now I know I've got these calories and things in my system, and I can attack this day. I feel more energized. And then I sit down and do some work. I try to do, like, work and stuff in the morning that requires, like, computer stuff or, like, a lot of thought to it because I feel like I'm more energized in the morning that way.
Definitely more focused and productive in the
morning. So I guess that's another habit that I've developed is doing that at a certain time. And then we train our clients whenever that may be. We usually stop training at 6 o'clock at night. I don't say usually, we do. That is a boundary we have. We don't train past 6 o'clock at night. And then we allow ourselves then in the habit of like creating each week. Now we're starting to get in the habit of doing the podcast on a certain time, doing a YouTube video on a certain time. So my habits are kind of just rotating around that stuff for the most part. But that's what I love. Like my habits are starting to rotate around the parts of our business that I love. And I love that because it's awesome to see something grow. And and that motivates me. That just those habits turn back around, and it just motivates me.
They feed the motivation because you become more successful when you build the habits to put more time and energy into the thing that motivates you.
Absolutely. And what do habits eventually lead into if you maintain it over a course of time? Consistency.
Yeah, they kind of go hand in hand. So
they do. I mean, you can't have a habit without being consistent.
Correct.
I would say.
Correct.
I mean, I think it's. You can talk about habits without consistency, but to develop the habit, you need to have.
Well, yeah, for it to even be considered a habit, you would have to do it on a consistent basis.
But I think consistency is a dangerous word, almost, that it needs to be consistently. How do I want to say this? It needs to be, your habits need to be consistently self-motivating, I guess, is the best way to put it, in that you have to, like, just saying to be consistent, you can be consistent in bad things as well.
Yes.
And so I guess that's what I'm getting at.
You could be consistently inconsistent.
There you go. That's what I was looking for. Consistently inconsistent. And that's what you don't want to get into. Wow. I can't believe I spent that long trying to think of that silly word and didn't get it. But yes, consistently inconsistent. That is dangerous. And I think it's important to recognize that.
Yeah.
But you don't get a habit without being consistent. You just don't.
Let's give an example of this. So one of the big things I think about with this, like, obviously training, that's like the obvious thing we're going to talk about here. Being successful as an athlete requires so many other habits other than developing the habit of training to be successfgoing So let's say you're wanting to get in the habit of tracking your macros. You've got a macro count that's, going to work for you. You're going to implement it. You've never tracked macros before, and you're trying to learn this habit. You need to, after you develop the habit of just tracking your food, you need to make sure that you are consistent in how you're tracking your food. Okay, well, am I tracking sodium every single day? Am I going to take the care to track different kinds of fat? Am I going to track my cholesterol? Am I going to track my sugar? Or are you just going to focus on your protein, your fat, and your carbs? Either way, whichever decision you make, you need to make sure that you're consistent about it so that you're not looking at these other variables wondering what could be happening. Like, things like sodium fluctuation that's something that I think that really everybody should monitor, because it does do things like fluctuate your weight, your sodium and your hydration and your carbohydrate intake are...
I mean, sodium, even as from a medical standpoint, you're talking about high blood pressure eventually and stuff like that. But I think you're absolutely right. It takes 2 to 4 weeks on average per psychologist to develop these trends into habits. So day one, you're kind of like forcing yourself to do it.
Yeah.
You're kind of forcing yourself into this new train of thought. All the way to 2 weeks to 4 weeks. And eventually after 2 to 4 weeks, it becomes second nature. And so the goal is to get to that point. And I learned this for the first time when I went to basic training in the Army, and they told me, hey, it's going to take 2 to 4 weeks for this to become a habit, for it to become second nature.
Before it doesn't suck so bad anymore.
Yeah, because it's just normal.
Because it's basic training.
Yes, well, yeah. I mean, it sucks either way.
Yeah.
But that's neither here nor there. But I mean, you can look at this in a very simple way, like when we program linear progression, for example. And this is something that we argue with some of our athletes about, but you have to maintain and do the same kind of workout, so if you want to get your bench press, the bench press should be a part of your workout if you want to increase your bench press.
Yes.
And you need to consistently do that movement in order to get better at it.
Yes.
And the same thing goes with the things in your life. If you want to develop the habit of reading more, you have to read more.
Yep.
And keep doing it, and keep doing it, and keep doing it until it becomes a habit. And it's the same with anything that you do. You didn't learn to drive by just getting behind the wheel and all of a sudden you knew how to drive. No, you had to learn over the course of time until it became second nature. I'm sure when you get behind the wheel now, you don't think of like brake, gas, blinker, turn. You just do it. You just get in the car and do it. But it wasn't like that, I guarantee, at first. And then when you first started driving, You probably thought about all those little things until you created the habit of doing it and the consistency of doing it over and over again to become second nature. And that's the idea, is creating good habits that become second nature.
Absolutely. And to go off of that driving example, things like versus the habit versus consistency, your habit, okay, drive and follow the speed limit and follow the law, versus the consistency of every time I change lanes, I'm going to use a blinker.
Right. Yeah.
Every time I make a turn, I'm going to use a blinker. Every time there's a stop sign, I'm going to stop and look both ways. And all this stuff sounds really like basic and obvious, but it's not. It's easy to
Not around here anyway.
lie to yourself, to fudge the little details on these things. And I'm using the example of driving, but this could really happen on anything. Like, oh, well, I'm going to track my macros, but I'm not going to weigh this handful of M&Ms. Or, oh, I'm not going to measure this chicken breast, even though I'm trying specifically to hit a protein goal. Like,
who are you hurting when you do that?
Yourself.
You're only hurting yourself by doing that. Nobody else cares.
Except for in the instance of driving, where you may cause an accident.
That is,
So, very important.
So this is also a PSA.
Also a PSA. So use a fucking blinker.
Use your fucking blinker and stop at the stop sign. All right? Stop T-boning people out there.
Yeah.
Especially if you're from this area. People don't know how to drive. Stop looking at your phones when the light turns green. I grew up in an era when we didn't have phones, so that wasn't really an option. The light turned green, you've been staring at it for 2 minutes.
You look both ways again.
And you go.
And then you go.
By less than 1 second, you're out into the intersection. Okay. Anyways, I can go on about this forever.
So, let's talk about some ways that you can effectively build new habits.
I think, so, all right, I'm going to steal a little bit here from our coach, Stacy Burr, because I went through a 30-day kind of like psychological reset with her. And one of the ways to develop new habits and stuff is to start journaling and that allows you to start recognizing what you are or aren't doing that you want to achieve. So
what type of content would you make sure you put in your journal every day?
I would say, first off, write down anything and everything you want, what's ever in your mind. But you should also break that down into your goals. So if your goals are to start, macro tracking, put it right in your journal. Do it right there. Start developing that habit. If your goals are to read more, if your goals are to watch less TV, if your goals are, to get out and go for a walk every day, put that all in your journal. And then it's kind of like rewarding to kind of look back and go, wow, I've been doing this for this long. Because all of a sudden, 2 days, 3 days turn into a month, turn into a year. Yeah. And you'll just really, you start to realize, you might not even need the journal anymore. You might, for me, I only had to journal for a little while, and I've started changing my habits. And it helped.
It brings that awareness to your actions.
It does.
And it
makes it real.
Forces you to be honest with yourself, because you're the only one that, you're talking to yourself.
You are.
When you're writing in your journal.
Which isn't crazy.
No, it's not crazy.
It's not crazy.
Not crazy.
Right?
It's healthy.
It's not crazy. It's not crazy.
It's healthy.
I just have to tell him. He doesn't listen all the time. I'm just saying. He doesn't like to listen. All right, that was for video. People who are watching the video can see that I'm actually a little bit nuts and talking to myself. Probably doesn't translate too well.
He's pointing at the wall, pretending that it's a person.
It's not. It's actually Trevor Jaffe right there on the floor.
And Brian Shaw.
Those who I was pointing at.
Yeah.
A couple of heroes.
So some other effective ways to build habits. One of my personal favorites is habit stacking. So that can be done a few different ways. It's pretty much exactly what it sounds like, where you take a habit that you already have and you stack it with a habit that you want to implement. Mm-hmm. So just a really basic example, because I'm really into habits and consistency in pretty much every aspect of my life. So brushing, flossing, mouthwash, right?
Self-care,
yep. Super fucking basic self-care. I wipe my face, mm-hmm. right? Every night. So when I'm wiping my face, I use my mouthwash at the same time.
I
so wiping my face is something that I've always done. mouthwash is one of those things where it's like very easy to brush it off, because if I don't wipe my face off, well, I'm going to get a pimple because I have dirt on my face and I sweat and I'm wearing makeup. Well, if I don't use mouthwash, it's a little bit easier of a thing because it's not an immediate repercussion. Does that make sense?
It does. It's not something you notice right away.
Overall, maintaining oral health is very important to me. So it is very important to me that I use mouthwash. So
you build it in.
Take a swig of mouthwash. While I'm swishing it around, I wash my face.
You wipe off your face.
Yep.
So you're ready for the next day.
Yep.
I don't do that. I don't wash my face like you do. But sometimes it's helpful to have people around you also that support you and tell you to brush your teeth.
Yeah, like me. I tell him to brush his teeth all the time.
I wasn't going to get into that necessarily.
All the time.
I mean, I definitely brush my teeth more ever since.
And you know what else is important? Flossing.
Yeah, I mean, I'm more with that one dentist out of 5.
Okay.
There's the 4 out of 5.
Doesn't support flossing?
Yeah, I'm going with the guy that doesn't support it. It's probably, really, if you're talking in terms of flat Earth, all right?
Here we go. Here we go, everybody.
If you're talking in terms of flat Earth, then do you really need to floss?
Yes. Everybody should floss. Well, at least once a day.
I think it's a right, left-wing conspiracy to buy more floss.
Okay. Let's say some other examples of habit stacking. Right?
It's not a conspiracy.
What? The flat Earth?
Flossing?
No, flossing is not a conspiracy.
You sure?
Yes.
Okay.
You're cute. That's funny.
Oh.
I have much nicer teeth than you, so.
I've never had a cavity.
Yeah, right.
Never had a cavity.
Yeah,
not once,
right.
Never. My dentists don't know why. They're like, you should.
I have a really hard time believing that.
I swear to God, ask my mom. I swear to God, Scout's honor. Ask my mother, she'll tell you. I've never had a cavity. I don't know what's wrong with me. I don't take care of my teeth that well. I do a terrible job.
Must be nice.
Anyways, so where are we going next? Now let's stop talking about my teeth.
Yeah, some other ways to habit stack that are there. It's just valuable. You can do it in pretty much any aspect of life. Like one of my favorite ones that I do, and I know you kind of do this sometimes too, but like making myself coffee in the morning. I make myself usually a French press every morning. So while I'm waiting for my kettle to boil, I unload the dishwasher. Mm-hmm. I'm taking a habit that I already have, which is making fresh coffee every morning, and stacking it with a habit that I want to implement, which is unloading the dishwasher and making sure. And usually I can get all the dishes done in the morning before my kettle even goes off.
And it sets you up for a better day.
It does.
You feel better about getting something accomplished. My coffee routine's a little bit different. When we were working, now we work from home, but when we weren't working from home, we would stop at Dunkin' Donuts pretty much every day. And that was really my fault. 'Cause I love Dunkin' Donuts, and for me, that was like...
Not me. Their coffee sucks.
No, their coffee's
Just
amazing.
throwing that out there.
It's awesome. You should go buy it. Tell them Nate sent you. They'll know what they're talking about, and you will not get a discount on your coffee. So... since a child, I've been drinking Dunkin' Donuts. So for me, it's always a way to kind of start your day. And then for a lot of people, I think coffee is the habit that starts their day, and it's a ritual almost.
Yeah, it is.
And for me, Dunkin' Donuts is that ritual, and it's Nate runs on Dunkin'. Is really what it comes down to. So that's a way that we maybe some other time we should discuss how marketing and businesses generate habits in you. Through their marketing campaigns and brainwashing mechanisms like the Russians use on us. Okay. And how they get us to floss when we really don't need to.
That's cute.
On the flat Earth.
That's cute. That's cute.
It is cute. I don't believe any of that, by the way. I'm not an idiot. I'm really not. So continue.
It's important that you say that.
Yes, I'm not an idiot.
So habits and consistency, how they go hand in hand. Again, another example is, I gave the example before of tracking your food versus how you track your food. Training versus how you train. So A lot of people just will go into the gym and be like, oh, well, this is what my program says, or maybe they're not even following a program, which is fine. Exercising in general is going to help keep you healthy, even if you're doing the same fucking thing every time you're in the gym. It's good for you. So
and it's still good for you, even if you're not progressing in any
But
way.
that's just the difference is, okay, well, the consistency of intention behind every single repetition, whether it's a warm-up, whether it's the bar, whether it's working weight, whether it's a supplementary movement or an accessory movement, whether it's a mobility movement, it doesn't matter. So you can go in and consistently give it everything you've got and put 100% intention behind it without doing max effort lifting. Important important aside, yes, you can do this without max effort lifting.
Absolutely.
And it's going to make a really big difference. Even if you're going in and you're hitting the same exact workout as you hit last week, if you put more intention and focus and just importance and care behind it versus just going through the motions, you're going to get more out of it. Same thing with sleep.
Oh, yeah. That's
sleep
a big
is
one.
another really, really big one.
Welcome to America, where we seem to forget about that one.
Yeah, like we think it's cool to not sleep and stuff.
It's not cool, kids.
It's not.
It's not cool.
I used to be like that too, but it was more of like a coping mechanism for me because I was an insomniac for basically until I got on medication to help me sleep, which was just a few years ago. But getting into that mentality of like, oh, well, I can be more productive if I don't sleep. I can stay up and get more work done. I'll get an edge above everybody else. Like, no, that's not correct. So then you can have shitty sleep, right? Maybe you're like, okay, well, I'm getting sleep. That's important. But
still has to be quality.
Don't have great what we call sleep hygiene, where your habits surrounding bedtime are not great and they do not help create what's the word I'm looking for? The transition of your brain from daytime activity into nighttime, it's time for rest. So
it's usually important.
And that can help you get really, really good rest. So the habit of developing a bedtime routine. So like I was talking about with the brushing, flossing, mouthwash, face wipe, flat earth, marking off on my mirror what kind of day I had. I always track my macros on my phone, and then I also do it again on my mirror calendar if I've had a perfect day, if I've just hit my calories and not macros, if I've been under for the day, if I haven't tracked at all, there is a symbol that goes for that. If I had a drink of alcohol, there is a symbol for that as well, and there's also a symbol for if I have gone for a walk. So that's usually after I've done my floss, brush, face.
It's a visual representation.
I do that on my calendar really quick, check off that I've taken my meds, and then that little habit has now prepared me for consistently good sleep because now I'm in the mindset of it's time to get some rest.
So what do you guys think? We want to know what your motivation is, what your habits are, and maybe what your boundaries are as well. So please leave some comments for us. Send us some messages.
Some good habits that help you guys stay in the gym, help you eat some good food.
And we'll talk about them in our next podcast. We'll give you a shout out in our next podcast. So send them our way. You can send them. You can visit our websites, Viking Strength Nutrition or VikingPowerlifting.com, or find us on social media. _ Viking Powerlifting is our powerlifting social media, our Instagrams. And our Instagrams, and Viking Strength Nutrition is our Instagrams for that as well. You can also find us on Facebook. If you just do a search for Viking Strength Nutrition or Viking Powerlifting, you'll find us. We're also on Twitter now.
Not really.
Sort of. I twit a little bit.
Do you?
Yeah, a little bit.
I don't do the Twitter.
But we do the YouTubes now.
We do the YouTubes.
Definitely follow YouTubes.
We do the YouTubes and the Instagrams.
So go onto the YouTubes and look up the Viking Inside.
Yes.
And if you find, I hope you find the Viking Inside, where we discuss many topics about strength and habits and everything that we kind of talk about in our podcast, but kind of on a different level. We go into the history of the sport quite a bit as well. And we talk about other sports, and we talk about other things that affect your daily life. There's a lot of good, funny stuff on there. We're producing a Flat Earth episode right now, where we discuss how strength training would work on a flat Earth as opposed to on a round Earth.
I'm gonna leave you.
I guess a spherical Earth, which we know is crazy. So anyways, follow us on those mediums and make sure you let your friends know about the Desire Over Doubt show. Share it amongst your friends and family, and share it with your enemies. I don't give a shit. Share it with everybody. Anyways, follow us and hit us up next time. I'm Nate, and this is
Savage Cat.
And this is the Desire Over Doubt show.
Catch you guys later.